Hi, I am Julie Hawks. Welcome to the Laws of Peace. Here you will learn how to understand and apply God's laws in simple ways so that you can take small steps to create big changes and miracles and to become the person you were always meant to be. The answers are in the scriptures. Let me show you how to find them. Today, our topic is how to stop doubting the answers that you receive. This is one of the biggest challenges that we all face. You receive revelation, you have an aha moment, you feel a moment of peace, you get excited about what you're receiving, and then the question starts coming, the doubts start coming. If you're like me, you're like, well, maybe I just made that up in my head. Or, that's just the answer I was looking for, or that couldn't really be right. And all of this confusion comes up, and all of this doubt comes up, and all of this fear comes up. And then we're really start struggling. And so I want to show you how to move past that and be confident about the answers you receive. And I want to give you some simple steps to overcome that self-doubt today. So we are going to start in the scriptures, and we are going to start with a true principle that happens to everybody, everywhere, anyone who has ever received revelation across the board. And this is in Hebrews chapter 10. And this is what I like to call the Satan principle. In Hebrews chapter 10, verse 32, it said, "But call to remembrance the former days in which, after ye were illuminated, ye endured a great fight of afflictions." The principle is this: as soon as you receive the light, as soon as you receive the answers, then a great fight of afflictions is going to come up. And a lot of it is going to come from Satan. He wants you to doubt the answers you receive. And so let's go look at that in real life, in a real life spiritual experience that happened to somebody. We're going to talk about Moses. So we're going to jump over to Moses chapter 1. And as a backstory, he's just had the burning bush experience. He's just talked to God. He's just learned about the stars and the moon and the universe. And he's seen the whole plan of salvation laid out. And he's figured out that he is the son of God, and that even though he's smaller than the dust of the earth, he really matters to God. And he's had this really neat spiritual experience. And as we talk about this, I want you to think about in the past when you've had a spiritual experience or when you thought you had received an answer. Sometimes those answers come big, like it's the angels are singing and you feel it all over your whole body. And sometimes those answers come small. It's just a thought that sounds like our voice in our head, or it's a feeling, or it's an urge, or it's a kind of a push or a nudge to do something. Whatever it looks like, think about that as we go through this process. So Moses has just been illuminated. Now watch what happens. Starting in verse 12, Satan shows up. And the first thing he does is he lies to Satan and he says, "Thou son of man, worship me." Now it's really interesting that he wants Moses to stop believing in himself. No longer is he a son of God, he's calling him a son of man. And Satan does the exact same thing to us. He tells us that we're not as good as we think we are, that we're not special, that we're not fill in the blank, right? He wants to take away your belief that you are a son or a daughter of God and that you matter to him. And he's going to do that through a lie. Second, he said, "Worship me." And Moses looks at him and he's like, "What are you talking about? I just saw God. Who are you? You have no light. I'm not going to worship you. That's stupid." And Satan, of course, goes, "No, no, 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 worship me." And then in verse 15, Moses says something really important. He says, "I can judge between thee and God." So the question I have for you is, can you judge between God and Satan? We talked about this in one of our other podcasts, that we need to know which voice we're hearing in our head. Are you hearing God talking to you? Are you hearing Satan talking to you? Or are you hearing that third voice, your own voice, that's questioning everything that you're receiving? Learn to recognize which voice you're hearing, because Moses did, and that helped him. So the very first thing that Moses does, is he tells Satan to get lost. He says, "Get thee hence, Satan. I'm not going to listen to you." And the second thing he does in verse 18 is he says, "Well, I have more things to ask God, so I'm not going to cease to call upon God." So he tells Satan to get lost, and he continues his prayers. Well, Satan doesn't like this, and so he builds his drama, and he builds his temptation, and he starts to get really scary. And watch what happens when Moses gets scared. This is so interesting. Now, when Moses has said these words, Satan cried with a loud voice, and he ranted upon the earth, and he commanded, saying, "I am the only begotten." Do you hear the lie? "Worship me." And it came to pass that Moses, in verse 20, began to fear exceedingly. And as he began to fear, he saw the bitterness of hell. What happened when Moses got scared? It got worse. And he saw the bitterness of hell. I'm sure you know what it feels like to be so scared that you're either frozen or you want to run or you're in that complete panic. And you're like, crap, what am I going to do? This is where Moses was. Let's see what he does. Nevertheless, calling upon God, he received strength, and he commanded, saying, depart from me, Satan, for this one God only will I worship, which is the God of glory. And then Satan got really mad. And Moses said again, depart thee hence. And then Satan threw a big tantrum and he left. So how does that apply in our lives? Now, we may not see Satan and he may not come and rant and rave and shake the earth around us, but I promise you he's going to lie to you. And I promise you he's going to make you want to doubt what you're receiving. And I promise you he's going to make you feel like dirt. So how do you handle it? Well, first of all, we know that Moses recognized him. And he says, I can see who you are, get lost. Second, he continued to call upon God. And as he called upon God, he received strength to keep moving forward. Now let's jump back into Hebrews chapter 10 and see what else we can do about this. In Hebrews chapter 10, verse 35, it says, cast not away therefore your confidence, which hath great recompense for reward. Now the word recompense means to compensate for loss or injury. And we need to remember the law of compensation. I can't talk. The law of compensation, where God's going to give back to us 100-fold, 10-fold, right? He's going to replace our tears of pain with tears of joy. And so when we're struggling and when we're suffering, we need to remember that God is there and that he is going to help us. And then there's something required. Watch. For ye have need of patience, that after ye have done the will of God, ye might receive the promise. So let's go back and let's put this into a step-by-step process of what we do when we receive revelation. So think about the last time you received revelation, or think about an answer that you currently need. First thing, recognize that doubt is coming from Satan. God's not going to make you doubt an answer. Second, tell him to get lost. Third, continue in your prayers. Fourth, this really helps me a lot, and that's to write down the answer. Richard G. Scott teaches a really beautiful principle. And that principle is that when you write something down, several things happen. The first thing is that when you write something down, you're telling the Lord that you're interested in what he has to say and you're going to take him seriously. And then he is going to give you more information. So wherever you're at, stop what you're doing, put a note in your phone, do a voice to text, write it down on a scrap of paper or the back of an envelope, put it in a journal, put paper and pencil by your bed. I don't care what it is, find a way to write it down. And when you write it down and then you ask the question, is there more? And when you're paying attention and the Lord sees that you're paying attention and he's like, oh, you're paying attention? Here, let me give you some more information. And you will probably receive more information. And you keep asking, is there more? Until you figure out that there is no more. And then you can go back and look at the information and say, okay, do I need to shift or change any of this? Does this all feel right? And then you have your revelation, or you have your answer, or you have your promise that things are going to be okay when everything around you is telling you that you're in an impossible situation and there is no way out. Because the Lord loves impossible situations and he loves to show you a way out, because he is a God that makes impossible things happen. And we can trust him to do that. So write it down. And then when the doubt comes, then you can go back and you can say, oh, I wrote this down. See, I didn't make this up in my head. It's written down. And that will strengthen your faith, because we need to strengthen our faith so that we can take action. We don't take action without faith. In fact, I want to read you a quote by Jeffrey R. Holland. In fact, he teaches this Satan principle actually really well. He gave a BYU speech long ago called Cast Not Away Therefore Your Confidence. And it's super good. And it gives way more details than I am in this short podcast. But this is what he said. He said, don't give up when the pressure mounts. Face your doubts, master your fears, exert your faith, and see the beauty of life unfold before you. The next thing we have to do is we have to hold on to the faith that we have. And we can do that in two ways. We can hold on by remembering that God is in the details, that he has a way through and around the challenges that we're facing. He has a plan for us and for our loved ones. And when we hold on to that faith, that helps us to take action. And then the second thing that we're going to do is we're going to take action even when we're scared. I want to share one more quote, and this is from Ronald Rasband. And he said this. He said, we must act on the first promptings. Remember the words of Nephi. I was led by the Spirit, not knowing beforehand the things which I should do. Nevertheless, I went forth. And so must we. We must be confident in our first promptings. Sometimes we rationalize. We wonder if we're feeling a spiritual impression or if it's just our own thoughts. When we begin to second guess or even third guess our feelings, and we all have, we are dismissing the Spirit. We are questioning divine counsel. The prophet Joseph Smith taught that if you will listen to the first promptings, you will get it right 9 times out of 10. First promptings are pure inspiration from heaven. When they confirm or testify to us, we need to recognize them for what they are and never let them slip past. We need to take action. Action is required. And the longer we hesitate, the more the doubt is going to grow. Let me repeat that. The longer you hesitate, the more the doubt is going to grow. And so that means you need to take action. You need to take action as soon as possible. And you can ask yourself, what is the next right step? How do I move forward in what the Lord is inviting me to do, or what the Lord is inviting me to stop doing? And as you take that action, then your revelation is going to be confirmed. And you're also going to increase in your motivation and your ability and your capacity to do what needs to be done. Now, the Lord isn't just going to ask you to do something that feels hard. He's also going to give you the capacity to do that. And so as you remember that, it will help you to overcome the fear. And you definitely want to overcome the fear, because we saw what happened to Moses. In fact, I want to read one more scripture that has to do with that. In D&C 67 verse 3, it says this, and it's kind of a hard scripture to hear. So are you ready? Ye endeavor to believe that ye should receive the blessings which was offered unto you, but behold, verily I say unto you, there were fears in your hearts, and verily this is the reason ye did not receive. When has fear gotten in the way of you receiving? It's a hard thing to think about, isn't it? So how do we overcome that? One of my favorite ways is just to put a scripture in my pocket. And when I start freaking out and panicking, I pull a scripture out of my pocket and I'm like, oh yeah, God says he's going to take care of this. Oh yeah, I have the help that I need. Oh yeah, things are going to be okay. Because we all get scared and we all doubt the answers. And we need to recognize the voice and where it's coming from. We need to tell Satan to get lost. We need to write down the answers we receive. We need to take action. We need to hold on to our belief and to our faith. And as we do these things, we're going to find that revelation comes easier, because the truth is all of us are building a skill, and receiving a revelation and receiving those answers from God is a skill. I'd like to finish with just one last scripture. And I want you to think about how this applies in your life right now to whatever it is that you're struggling with right now. This is from Exodus 14, verses 13 and 14. Listen for the promise. Fear not. That's the action. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will show to you today. The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. Thank you so much for being here today with me. If you found this podcast helpful, will you do 2 things for me? First of all, will you share it with a friend? And then you have somebody to discuss it with and talk about, well, did you agree with that? Did you like that? What did you think? It's always fun when we share it with a friend. And secondly, if you enjoyed this podcast, I have a masterclass coming up that is going to be so beneficial. It is called Find Your Spiritual Gifts and Discover Your Purpose. And that's exactly what it is. It's a 2-hour masterclass. We're going to dive deep, deep, deep into figuring out what your gifts are and how that applies to your mission and purpose in life. And you can find more information about this class in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here today. Have a wonderful day.